Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Reading Books for You. This is a continuation of the novel called The Other Side of Me by Sidney Sheldon. Let's start with chapter 5. Even though I was working 6 days a week in a haberdashery and at Mendel Brothers, 7 nights a week at downtown hotel check rooms, and Saturdays at Ephraim's drugstore as well, the money was still short. Otto got a part-time job working in a boiler room on the south side, an operation that would now be called telemarketing, the object being to sell products to strangers over the telephone. This particular operation was in a large bare room with a dozen men, each with a telephone, talking simultaneously to prospects, trying to sell them oil wells, hot stocks, or anything else that would sound like an inviting investment. It was a high-pressure operation. The names and phone numbers of potential customers were obtained from master lists sold to whomever was running boiler rooms. The salesmen got a commission on sales they made. Otto would come home at night and talk excitedly about the boiler room. Since it was open 7 days a week, I decided to drop by to see if I could earn some extra money on Sundays. Otto arranged for me to have a tryout, and following Sunday I went to work with him. When I arrived, I stood there in the dreary room, listening to the sales pitches. "Mr. Collins, it's a lucky thing for you that I was able to reach you. My name is Jason Richards, and I have some great news for you. You and your family have just won a free VIP trip to Bermuda. All you have to do is send me a check for..." "Mr. Adams, I have some wonderful news for you. My name is Brown, Jim Brown. I know that you have invested in stocks, and there's a new issue coming out that's going to have a 100% rise in the next 6 weeks. Not many people know about it, but if you want to make some real money..." "Mrs. Doyle, this is Charlie Chase. Congratulations. You and your husband and little Amanda and Peter have been selected for a free trip to..." And so it went. It amazed me how many people actually bought the pie in the sky offered by the salesman. For some reason, doctors seemed to be the most gullible. They would buy almost anything. Most of the products that were sold were either defective, overpriced, inferior, or non-existent. I had my fill of the boiler room that Sunday and never returned. My job at Mendel Brothers was boring and easy, but I was not looking for easy. I wanted a challenge, something that would give me a chance to grow. I knew that if I did well here, I would have a chance of moving up. One day, I might be made head of the department. Mendel Brothers had a chain of stores around the country, so in time I could become a regional manager and even work my way up to president. On a Monday morning, my boss, Mr. Young, came over to me. "I have some bad news for you, Sheldon." I was staring at him. "What?" "I'm going to have to let you go." I tried to sound calm. Did I do something wrong? "No. All the departments have orders to cut overheads. You were the last one hired, so you're going to have to be the first to go." I felt as though someone had taken my heart and squeezed it. I needed this job desperately. He had no idea that he was not only firing a clerk in the haberdashery department, but that he was firing the future president of the company. I knew I had to find another job as quickly as possible. Debts were piling up. We owed grocery bills, and landlord was getting nasty, and our utilities, which had already been shut off several times, were about to be shut off again. I thought of someone who might be able to help. Charlie Fine, a long-time friend of my father, was an executive at a large manufacturing company. I asked Otto whether he thought it would be all right if I talked to Charlie about getting a job. Otto thought about it for a moment, looked at me, and said, "I'll talk to him for you." The following morning, I was walking through the huge gates of the Stuart Warner factory, the world's largest manufacturer of automobile gears. The factory was housed in a 5-story building that took up an entire block on Diversey Street. A guard escorted me through the factory floor, crowded with huge, arcane machines that looked like prehistoric monsters. The noise from the machines was incredible. Otto Karp, a short, heavy-set man with a thick German accent, was waiting for me. "So, you're going to work here?" he said. "Yes, sir." He looked disappointed. "Follow me." We started walking across the huge factory floor. All the machines were running in full speed. As we approached one of the machines, Karp said, "This makes dry and driven gears for speedometers. They turn the flexible shaft that drives the speedometer. Understand?" I had no idea what he was talking about. "Right." He led me over to the machine next to it. "What you see coming out here are round drive gears that are pressed into the output shaft of the transmission. The long one is the drive gear that's inserted at a right angle to mesh with the drive gear." I looked at him and wondered, Chinese? Swahili? We went to the next machine. Here, they're making drive gears that press onto the front wheel hub. The driven gear is fixed to the brake backing plate to mesh with the drive gear. See? I nodded. He walked me over to another machine. This machine replaces worn gears. The transmission gearing has been standard for a long time. The advantage of the front wheel systems is that axle ratios can be changed, or multiple ratio rear axles can be used without affecting the speedometer accuracy. See? Swahili, I decided. Of course. Now I'll show you your department. He took me over to the short order department where I was to take charge. The machines I had been introduced to were mammoth and were built to turn out huge orders for automobile manufacturers, 500,000 gears or more at a time. The short order department consisted of 3 much smaller machines. Otto Karp explained, "If someone orders 5 or 10 gears, we can't afford to start up the big machines for that small an order. But these machines are equipped to turn out as few as one or 2 gears. When a short order comes in, you will handle it and it can be filled right away." "How do I do that?" "First, you will be handed a purchase order. The order can be from anywhere from 1 to a dozen drive or driven gears. Next, you give the order to the machinist. When the gears are ready, you'll take them to the annealing department where they'll be hardened. Your next stop is inspection and finally the wrapping department." It sounded simple enough. I learned that my predecessor had given the men who worked in the short order department no more than 6 orders a day. The rest he held back, and the men sat around half the day doing nothing. I thought it was a waste. Within a month, I had increased the output by 50%. At Christmas time, I got my reward. Otto Karp had handed me a check for $14 and said, "Here, you deserve it. You have a $1 raise." Otto was traveling on the road and Natalie was working 6 days a week at a dress shop. Richard was going to school. My days at Stuart Warner, working in the dark surroundings of the factory, surrounded by surrealistic machinery, had become mind-numbing. My evenings were just as bad. I rode the L downtown to the Loop, walked into the hotel where I was working, and spent the next few hours receiving and returning overcoats. My life had become an ugly grey rut again, and there was no way out. Riding home on the L late one night, Coming from work, an ad in the Chicago Tribune newspaper caught my eye. Paul Ash is sponsoring an amateur contest. Start your career in show business. Paul Ash, a nationally known band leader, was appearing at the Chicago theater. The ad was catnip to me. I had no idea what the amateur contest was about, but I knew I wanted to be in it. On Saturday, before I went to work at the drugstore, I stopped at the Chicago theater and asked to see Paul Ash. His manager came out of an office. "What can I do for you?" "I'd like to enter the amateur contest," I said. He consulted a paper. "We don't have an announcer yet. Can you handle that?" "Oh, yes, sir." "Good. What's your name?" What was my name? Sheldon was not a show business name. People were always misspelling it and mispronouncing it. I needed a name they would remember. The possibilities raced through my mind. Gable, Cooper, Grant, Stewart, Powell. The man was staring at me. "Don't you know your name?" "Of course I do," I said quickly. "It's Sidney Sheldon. Sidney Sheldon." He wrote it down. "All right. Be here next Saturday, Sheldon, 6 o'clock. You'll be broadcasting from the audio on a remote from WGN." Whatever that meant, right? I hurried home to break the news to my parents and my brother Richard. They were excited. There was one more thing I had to tell them. I'm using a different name. What do you mean? Well, Sheldon is not a show business name. From now on, I'm Sidney Sheldon. They looked at one another and then shrugged. Okay. I had difficulty sleeping for the next few nights. I knew that this finally was the beginning. I was going to win this contest. Paul Ash would give me a contract to travel around the country with him. Sidney Sheldon would travel around the country with him. When Saturday reluctantly dragged its way onto the calendar, I returned to the Chicago theater and was ushered into a small broadcast studio with several other young contestants. There was a comedian, a singer, a female pianist, and an accordion player. The doctor said to me, "Sheldon." I felt a little thrill. It was the first time anyone had spoken my new name. "Yes, sir?" "When I point to you, you'll step up to the microphone and start the show. You'll say, 'Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Paul Ash Amateur Contest. This is your announcer, Sidney Sheldon. We're going to give you an exciting show, so stay tuned.' Got that?" "Yes, sir." 15 minutes later, the director looked up at the studio clock on the wall and raised his arm. "Quiet, everyone." He began counting. He pointed to me, and I was ready for show business. I had never been calmer in my life because I knew that this was the beginning of a wonderful career, and I was going to start under my new show business name. With great composure, I stepped up to the microphone, took a deep breath, and said, in my best announcer's voice, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Paul Ash Amateur Contest. This is your announcer, Sidney Sheldon." This is the end of Chapter 5. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. If there's any improvements that you want me to do, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you.